Chuck, can you see David okay?
Absolutely.
Awesome. The floor is yours, David. Thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you for having me. I have a running joke in my head. I tell a person that I've created a new approach to mental health care. And they tell me, well, that's good. You're going to need it because you're crazy. And I guess, well, that remains to be seen. But in the meantime, I have created an alternative to therapy. And that's what Foresight's emotional alignment is. And I am a software engineer and project manager by trade. So I'm not a psychologist. So the first question would be, well, why did you do that? I started doing web development back in 1994, but always had an interest in social engineering stuff and kind of did side projects from time to time. And in early 2015, I started up a self-help mental health website for youth experiencing adversity. My goal was that kids kind of needed, some help sometimes, and their parents weren't necessarily, helping them with that. In fact, they might have been causing a problem. So here was a space where they could go to and be safe and talk about things. Fortunately, I had a psychologist friend of mine. He was on board with helping me. And for the next 2 years, we researched. We figured out what would the content be on this website. And unfortunately, what we found was that there was all kinds of scattered ideas. It was probably a new approach for as many practitioners as there were. One thing I did find that was kind of, intriguing and not disappointing was that, and then this is kind of a poll here. I don't know if you know that the mental health care industry is based upon the DSM. Have you heard of that? Okay. Did you know that the National Institute for Mental Health, which oversees the field of mental health care, says that the DSM is not scientifically valid? I think that would probably surprise a lot of people. So basically, when your insurance company needs you to, have a code because you have bipolar or depression or anxiety, you use this DSM book. And the problem is that there's all kinds of, it's plagued with problems, comorbidity and other issues and so on. But anyway, that was a fascinating fact. At the end of 2 years, though, we had come up with a couple of conclusions. The first thing was that the one thing, the way we could help anyone was build their resilience, right? As I was kind of referencing before, there was all kinds of ways as to how people thought you could build it, but that was the one thing. If you taught someone how to better handle adversity, you could help them, whether they just got kicked off the baseball team or they were dealing with some traumatic event. The other thing is that we decided not to do the website. And the reasoning was because there was a couple things. First was because we were going with minors, and if the parents didn't approve of the website because they were potentially outing them, that would provide issues. There was also the complication of mandatory reporting. If someone's told us about abuse that was going on in the home, did we as a website have the legal requirement to tell the authorities about that? So it kind of made the youth market unattainable. Cool thing though is that in the interim, I had started the beginnings of what I call my behavior heuristic. And I use that to teach people how the mind works so they can better understand their behavior and thoughts and stuff like that. So for the next 4 years, one other thing. Yeah, I was told by my psychologist friend of mine, do not treat people, which makes a lot of sense because basically I'm not a psychologist. So I'd be violating laws and stuff like that. So that was kind of the thing that was, hanging in the back of my head. As a result of that, for the next 4 years, I tried to figure out how can I make money from this? I kind of felt like I had created the laser, but what would the application be? I tried to create a program for nurses who are experiencing burnout. I tried to create a program for retail employees for dealing with street people who come in and start yelling at the top of their lungs. A situation I had, viewed on numerous occasions. And while doing that, I continued to coach people to refine what I call my algorithm, that behavior heuristic. So I kept working with people on different issues. And it was normally just like, what is your challenge in life? But it kept leaning towards this whole mental health issue. And that became a problem. So after enough development, I figured I'm going to actually go ahead and do it. And the reason I was able to do that and create my own app to build, promoting this alternative approach to therapy was that while I was doing all the research, I had actually created all the elements needed for therapy. I had essentially replaced what you learn when you go to school from psychology and what the DSM does. I have my own assessment system. The great thing about it, though, is that a typical assessment is that you have a disorder. In my estimation, if you're struggling with something mentally, the last thing you want to have to go into an office is for, hey, what is my disorder? So I came up with emotional misalignment, and I explained to people that there are these 4 core emotions that they need to learn and so on. And the cool thing about it is that it is ridiculously accurate. So much so that, for example, I was at UNC Charlotte yesterday campus. I have this emotions expert booth, which you saw in this slide here. I set it up for campus. College kids walk up to my booth all day long. First of all, I'm very approachable. So they're going to talk to me about things that they wouldn't go to counseling for. They're also going to talk about things that aren't necessarily mental health issues. They're just challenged with something, and they're not really depressed or something, but they're just struggling with, some new thing in their life, a relationship that they ended, or a career decision that they have to make, and so on. And I'm able to, within just a couple of minutes, let them know what their core emotional misalignment is. I can also tell what their childhood dynamic was that created that. That usually freaks people out a little bit, but to some extent they love it. They're like, oh, now I understand why I do that. I kind of learned this thing and it's not really helpful, but I just keep doing it because it feels right. So the cool thing is that while I started out with this self-help mental health website that I really couldn't do because we were going to minors, I've actually now created a system where I'm going back to, college students and potentially minors, and now it kind of lives on its own. So we don't have to worry about, mandatory reporting issues, because these kids are going to learn to deal with it themselves. They're going to build their resilience, and they're going to learn how to handle a situation that they're stuck in. That's emotional alignment. Questions? Thank you.
Good job. I don't know. I mean, it resonates with me. So I guess my question is, I've seen this dichotomy of, I guess, men not being in touch with their emotions.
Right.
So to me, it's probably more of a men's problem. How do we get the men to put down the wall and bring that out? So I'm curious on campus if it's more women or men that are approaching you and talking through that piece of it. But I guess what's the app? How are you? I guess my questions are: how are you doing? How are you getting some market share? Are you out in the market selling it at this
right
point?
So the 1.0 app that's available now is really more of a reference tool. It's not self-help capable yet. That's what I'm currently pursuing funding for. Kind of want to do my pitch here, and it will have multimedia and interactive and be engaging and so on. All the typical stuff that bells and whistles to go with it today.
Yes.
I first started my emotions expert booth in 2019, and I started pursuing the college market in early 2020. I did Portland State University in January of 2020. Went really well, and then I was just going to start going up and down the West Coast. Then February hit. So that's at that time, I was like, oh, what do I do? And I knew that TikTok was Gen Z. So I started up a TikTok channel. I got about 20,000 followers in a couple months' time. So I was really good with it. There's a whole other reason why I didn't pursue it, because at the time I really couldn't monetize it. But what I found was that the vast majority of people that were interested in emotional alignment, about 75% were females. And probably 75% of them were in Gen Z. So, age 15 to 25. So yes, definitely more women. I'd say probably 2 to 3, 2/3 of the people come up to my booth are women. At the same time, I was at Central Piedmont campus last week with my emotions expert. I was amazed at some of the people who come up, and some of the stuff that they talk to me about, right? Basically, someone saying, yeah, I grew up in a lot of arguing, and I walk around this anger, I don't like it. And a person who would not expect to be reaching out. So, it's definitely women are more comfortable with their emotions in general, but a combination of, being out there and giving this easy approach. I mean, I'm this geeky looking out of DC. I wear a bow tie, very approachable, right? There's nothing, intimidating about me. So it gets people out of the closet.
Has that Bill Nye the Science Guy?
Exactly. And it's funny because him in Beekman's world. So the 2.0 version of my app, that's what I envision. I'm already starting to design it, and what I figured it would be that kind of edutainment, and that's my approach. Have these skits that kind of funny but also educational as well, to show people how do you handle a certain situation. I would have someone talking to someone else, someone says something, and then you punch them in the stomach. Because you experience that for some people experience that when they criticize.
So I guess I'm struggling to find out where the revenue stream is.
Yeah, so my go-to-market strategy is to establish emotional alignment as an alternative to therapy. And I'm actually, beginning to basically do the marketing campaign that I started 3 years ago. And like, for example, I was on UNC Charlotte campus for a day. I met the dean of students. She wants to do an emotional wellness seminar. I'm already talking to an economics professor who's helping me improve my approach. Basically, the idea is to kind of do this guerrilla marketing on campuses. I'll hit RDU in the spring, and to build up a following, right? And to sooner or later, especially given the nature of these campuses, Duke, Raleigh, and NC State in particular, my approach is going to enter the public dialogue, right? It's kind of a grassroots approach, and that's kind of my expectation. At that point, when people start to become more familiar with emotional alignment, practitioners are going to be like, hey, I would like to use your approach. So my long-term approach, I call it the Facebook strategy. My goal is to build awareness, get a lot of people using the product, or at least talking about it. Then to start, once I build up that critical mass, and therapists start asking about it, then I take the Uber approach. I start training and licensing therapists to use my system, and I get a percentage of their consulting fees.
Okay.
I think if this deck is intended to go in front of investors and people that you want to help drive your vision forward, you should look at Guy Kawasaki's 10 slides you need in your pitch deck.
Yeah.
I think you do a good job setting up the problem, and I really like the booth picture. And
right. Like that. Okay, that's good to know.
You've got to have like a timeline slide.
Yeah.
That shows where you're currently at, and then you've got to have at least one financial model and like a team slide. Who else is it besides you?